Not many people have heard about this story, so I thought you might like to. This is the story of how 360,000 Volkswagen cars were left abandoned across 11 different desert fields in North America. They sat there for years, rusting away, and in fact, some of them are still sitting there to this day. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. Great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking, and thank you to our supporters on Patreon. Really appreciate what you do. We couldn't be here without you, so I'll put a link in the description below to our Patreon page. Volkswagen Group, famous for their diesel scandal. Now, there's a little known fact here. The company that pays more on warranty costs per car sold than any other company in the world is in fact Ford. But for 2 straight years, Ford was beaten to this dubious record by the Volkswagen Group during the diesel scandal period. And it wasn't until a couple of years after this ended that images emerged showing thousands and thousands of cars stretching as far as the eye could see in the Californian desert after the Volkswagen Group was forced to buy back 360,000 cars for nearly $7.5 billion over the diesel scandal. These cars drove quite fine. In fact, there was really nothing wrong with them, other than the fact that they were emitting more emissions, in fact, a lot more emissions than what Volkswagen Group said that they were. Now, the German automaker was forced to get creative when it came to responsibly storing the hundreds of thousands of vehicles they had to buy back. And I'm not sure if you'd call this particularly responsible, considering these cars sat here for many years. Storage lots included a shuttered suburban Detroit football stadium, a former Minnesota paper mill, and this massive desert site in California near Victorville. Volkswagen spokeswoman Janine Greneven said in a statement that the storage facility in Victorville, California was one of many to ensure the responsible storage of vehicles that were brought back under the terms of the Volkswagen diesel settlements. These vehicles, she said, were being stored, and still are to some degree, on an interim basis, and routinely maintained in a manner to ensure their long-term operability and quality, so that they may be returned to commerce or exported once US regulators approve appropriate emissions modifications. While it was originally suggested Volkswagen may scrap the hundreds of thousands of cars for parts, it appears that the manufacturer was hoping to return them to the market once they met emissions guidelines. But it took the Volkswagen Group so long to fix the cars, to find out a solution, that by the time they actually did, the cars were worth mere pittance of what their original value was. In fact, many of them had actually rusted. So Volkswagen had to replace thousands and thousands of parts on these cars to try to get them into a saleable condition. As a result, many of these cars were never driven. They were simply used as spare parts. In total, the Volkswagen Group agreed to spend more than $25 billion in the United States for claims from owners, environmental regulators, states, and dealers, and offered to buy back 500,000 polluting US vehicles. The buybacks continued through the end of 2020, and it took, therefore, many years for this mess to be sorted out. In fact, the Volkswagen Group are actually still in court in the United Kingdom for this very issue. The court filing originally said, through December 31, that Volkswagen had reacquired 335,000 diesel vehicles, resold only 13,000, and destroyed about 28,000. So as you can see, Volkswagen seems to be destroying more of these cars than it was actually fixing up to resell. Volkswagen said they had to buy back 85% of the vehicles involved by June 2019 or face higher payments for emissions. And at the time, Volkswagen had issued 437,273 letter offers, offering nearly $8 billion in compensation and buybacks, the most expensive recall in the history of the automotive industry. At the time that this happened, we really didn't know just what the big problem was with these cars. And many people thought, well, really, is it that big of a deal? But truthfully, it was. Concerns over cancer-causing nitrogen dioxide emissions have grown significantly since Volkswagen was found in September 2015 to have cheated air pollution tests for 11 million diesel vehicles worldwide. Recently, Toyota has been found to have been involved in this scandal as well. However, the big problem here is it was revealed within the last 48 hours that cancer rates for people under the age of 50 have increased by 70% in the last 10 years. That shouldn't be happening. And nitrogen dioxide emissions are one of the key reasons that it is, says the World Health Organization. In April 2017, Volkswagen was sentenced to 3 years probation after pleading guilty to 3 felony counts, and it paid $4.3 billion in federal penalties. Owners of affected vehicles in the US were offered compensation worth thousands of pounds, but the manufacturer refused to make payouts in the UK. When this happened, the FBI actually arrested Volkswagen executive Oliver Schmidt in Florida on conspiracy charges relating to the fuel emissions scandal. He led the German company's US regulatory compliance officers from 2014 to 2015, and lawsuits accused him of playing an important role in Volkswagen's efforts to conceal its emissions cheating from US regulators. In other words, he knew all about it. Watchdogs, MPs, and consumer groups expressed outrage at Volkswagen, saying the firm must pay out for cheating on emissions tests to make emissions of their diesel vehicles appear less polluting. The German automaker pleaded guilty in March of 2017 to criminal charges that it defrauded the US and conspired to violate the Clean Air Act. The company agreed to pay $4.3 billion in criminal and civil fines on top of $17.5 billion the company had already agreed to pay in settlements with car owners, dealers, and for environmental cleanup. Now, if these images are anything to go by, the Volkswagen Group's environmental cleanup maybe wasn't quite that successful. In total, this scandal cost the Volkswagen Group $35 billion. And yes, while it's true that there are actually some small fleets of Chinese cars, Chinese electric cars, which have very non-valuable battery packs sitting abandoned in fields after the ride sharing ended catastrophically and bankrupted a number of companies, the biggest problem we're now facing is no longer the Volkswagen diesel emissions scandal, but the very real problematic reality that millions of cars in China right now, which are currently for sale, will not be able to be sold as they don't meet emissions regulations. There is an overbuilding of cars in China, not EVs, but internal combustion engine vehicles. The Chinese don't want them anymore. They don't meet emissions regulations. And this could be a very big problem because China is planning to flood overseas markets with cars that the Chinese simply don't want. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. Thank you for watching.